Right, so it's a pretty standard CNC route of all these parts. I'm going to just do them all as one for now, one piece of wood. Could be more efficient with this big space here, but should be alright for now anyway. So it's in the correct plane, just drop it down to the bottom of the plane like that. Like I say, this is just a quick little overview. If you're not sure how to use the machine, then obviously watch the dedicated video on the Boxford router instructions and then come and speak to one of us about how to do it. We're going to go for just 10mm bigger than the model size there, 25mm MDF. Remember to make it 100%. And work should be fine like that. Might need to tweak it, depends on whether the tool's set up correctly. I happen to know this one is fine anyway, so should be good. Now here we've got the option of the straight cutter or the radius cutter, typically. I'm going to go for the straight cutter because this will mean I've got these little bits here will be much more crisp, sharp edges. These internal edge corners are just going to come out nice and sharp, unlike if you use the radius cutter, you'll have a fillet around the whole thing. The flip side of that is I might just find the surfaces aren't quite as smooth as they would be if it used the radius cutter. So it's whichever way you prefer. You might have to spend a bit longer sanding it if it's a straight cutter, or you might have to sand these internal corners if it's radius. But I just figured it's going to be a lot easier to sand these surfaces. Leave those default. That can give a better result, but it will be a lot slower. I happen to know just for MDF that should be a fine amount of default. So we'll just go through all of those standard settings, see how it comes out like that. Take a little while. There you go. Watch the simulation on the other program down here when it spits it out. So I'm just going to save that G file. And hopefully it should just automatically open it up in this one here. There you go. As I said, there's a more detailed video on DTTV about how to use these routers. So we'll just watch the sped up version of this, finish its job and take it from there. See, it came out pretty nice and sharp. Nice sharp internal edges there from the straight cutter. It's pretty close to the base of the MDF as well, so it shouldn't take much to cut it out. Should be able to do both cleaning up those fluffy surfaces from the straight cutter and just remove the remaining base material with a Stanley knife. Obviously, always remember to cut away from your hands, don't cut towards you. And then these surfaces, you can just scrape the fibres away before sanding them. They'll just make it a bit easier, a bit quicker to sand it without taking away any of the form and detail. The MDF will need to have some form of sealer on it. In this case I'm using just PVA wood glue. Just rubbing it onto the surface like this. Just making sure, obviously I don't leave any streaks, too much in the way of streaks and blobs, because they're just going to make sanding it a bit more tedious. We've got another product called sanding sealer. It's the same kind of purpose, it will just block the pores of the MDF. You will need to apply a few coats of it as well to get the same effect. So some bits the CNC router, as I mentioned, won't be able to do the overhangs. This bit in here is going to be an issue, so I'm going to just use the bobbin sander without the jig underneath. Just be able to sand that down so I can get the round clutch on it. Careful, obviously it's going to flip this way, so you need to hold on to something quite steady. Remember, this bobbin's got a bit of a wobble to it. If you create too much dust like this, it's probably wise to wear a dust mask as well. Not the nicest stuff, MDF dust. So once you've got your PVA on your model, you're going to have to think about sanding it. We've got a number of different grips of sandpaper here. So 80 grit, the number on the back is about the roughest kind of sandpaper we use here. It takes off a lot of material quickly, but it leaves scratch surface. So obviously you go up to finer sandpaper. We've got up to 1200 here, which is super fine. Use that to flatten final layers of paint to get really glossy finishes. A lot of products aren't actually that glossy, so you don't need to worry quite often, but if you want kind of car perfect showroom finish, then you might use that. So work your way up the grit gradually. So work from 80 to 120, 240, 400, etc. If you go from 80 to 600, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to polish out the deep scratches. As well as that, think about how you're going to use it. So little scraps, by all means, they're quite useful, efficient. We've got a tub here, which is normally kept there. They can be good for just rounding off corners. They're not always so good to get a good control, but if you're just getting a nice smooth rounded surface, by all means use the scrap. Otherwise I recommend using a sanding board. So obviously a big sanding board here, and then this tray here of sanding board, normally kept down there. Both advantage of having a rigid surface, so you can get hard edges, what have you, and you can customise, so you can put whatever grip you want on, and also attach it to whatever profile you want. So this dowel makes quite a nice internal radius of that particular size, for example. The red oxide, general purpose, lower grit sandpaper, but the black stuff's called wet and dry, and it works a lot better quite often with a bit of water on it. Lubricates the paper, stops it clogging up with dust, but also obviously mushes up the dust so you don't get it airborne so easily. So it can be a bit messy as well, just on the desk, but you can just wipe it clean afterwards. Things to think about, so you're going to probably start with 80 to 240 on this initial PVA coat. It's going to take a bit of time really to get it smooth, but to get a really nice smooth finish, it's just worth taking your time at this stage, getting it nice. I've sanded this all down now, so it's nice and smooth. Now after an initial coat of PVA, I find the best second coat is acrylic paint. So we're just using the art acrylic paint here. It's a lot cheaper, it's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than aerosol paint. And it doesn't soak up into the MDF as much as aerosol does. If I painted straight onto this with spray paint, I just find it would just be like a sponge, and it would just cane a whole can of paint before I've even got a nice smooth coat. So I'm just going to hand brush this on carefully, trying not to get too many brush strokes and an even coat. But I'll find when it's completely dry, I might want to go over it just very gently with a fine grit, something like a 400 grit. So when you're near complete, you can start adding the detail parts, for example these plastic parts that I've cut out. The idea is we'll put them all together, and then any last imperfections like that and this little bit of damage there, I can just use car body filler. Blending any bits together, for example the top bit here will need to have a little bit of, this bit here. Just a little bit of filler between there and there. There's a step either side if you look on the drill, but then this bit here blends into that radius there. So I'm going to just use a tiny bit of filler, my hand's in the way, just a tiny bit of filler on that side. I'm also preempting the little bit behind these vents being sprayed yellow, which I don't really want if it's going to be dark. So I'm just going to mask it with a bit of card like that. I've just bent the edge of it up like that, so hopefully with tweezers I should be able to pick it out. Obviously I don't want it sticking out too much, because then I won't be able to get that bit painted. Now at the stage where I've stuck down the detail parts, I've got these parts 3D printed. I just laser cut a little sliver the same diameter as this, bit of trial and error just to fill in this extra gap. Bit of filler and just a general sand down. Some bits are a little bit rough. I'm kind of counting on the fact that these bits are like rubberized black plastic or rubber, so they're not going to be so critical to be smooth. Also acrylic, it's okay just to get a nice enough finish, but you've got to be careful not to get too many like chips on where it's thick. So I think the next step is obviously to give it a coat of primer and another coat of paint, another layer, and then sand it down with a finer grit just to be able to get everything smoother and smoother. I'm going to go for the high build primer. It's like primer filler. The idea is it just kind of smooths out any imperfections, and being acrylic based as well, it shouldn't react with the paint. That's something really important to consider. It's best not to mix the types of paint, just because they can react with one another and cause blisters and all sorts of crackles, especially if you apply it before the other one has gone off completely. So I'm going to just spray this initial body. Best thing to do, we're going to put it on this banding wheel, which you can see is brand new. In order to keep it from lasting, well, keep it lasting as long as possible, try and protect the underside of it, because eventually the build-up of paint will just make the bearings seize a little bit. So I'm just going to use that bit of waste paper, put this scrap MDF on the top, and position it like that. Now the idea is the banding wheel will get it to rotate around, so I should be able to spray it evenly. If I put it face down, half side on each like that, bear in mind the big extraction is going to be pulling the paint over it, so actually it's better off being vertical so the paint will hit it as I apply it out towards this extraction. Best thing to do as well for best results is to make sure this is warm. So if you're doing it in the, well, a lot of you will be doing your final projects towards Easter time anyway, so the ambient temperature should be okay, but just make sure it's not being left too cold first thing in the morning. Now the important thing to do when spraying is to work like that. So in other words, if I do that, you'll see I get a build-up here and here where I change direction. So if you work on a movement like that and then spray as you go over it, it's really critical to make sure you spray evenly, take your time. If you try and get something looking opaque, the colour you want it, too soon, then you're going to get drips. It's going to pull down. So best just to work coat by coat, do a little bit at a time, see if you can get the whole thing evenly painted. Be aware that is much closer than that, so that's going to take a lot more paint than that bit there. Be careful of that, so maybe work underneath. See, the vapour is just being sucked away like that very quickly, so I can't smell the paint, which is a good thing because it's not particularly good for you. Now you'll see I'm beginning to get it all evenly coated. I'm not expecting to get it all coated in one go, so I might go off and write up a little bit of PowerPoint whilst doing once the whole thing's painted. Careful there, that's already somewhere where I might be concerned about it dripping. It's not the end of the world if it drips. You can sand it down with a very fine, above 400, 600 grit, should take off a drip nice and quickly. 1000 grit will just get it smoothish, and then 1200 nice and very smooth. If you're not going to come back and paint for a while with your paint, best to turn it upside down and just hold it down for a few seconds. That'll clear out the nozzle. Next time it shouldn't be blocked. At first glance it looks pretty good, although when you look carefully and you hold it up to the light, you can see the surface is still a little bit rough and pitted. So the first stage is to just give it another little sand down. Be prepared to lose the grey and go back down to the yellow. It's spray filler, so we're just kind of filling in the bottom troughs, the valleys, and sanding off the peaks. Hopefully it'll just be one job, one coat, and then another spray coat should get it nice and finished. We want to be able to use the right kind of grit, so 240, like this emery cloth, is about the least you want to go at this stage. We can go in with 240, but just go lightly with it, don't press too hard. And you'll see it's already kind of showing up the yellow a little bit. Now a few coats of this, a few rounds of this will get it really nice and smooth. You might want to go in with a needle file as well and just get these edges a bit straighter. This is nearly finished now. I'd say ready for another coat. You can see it's a tedious exercise, it can be messy as well, so clean up afterwards. But the results are worth it because, as you can see, this wasn't painted with acrylic paint first of all. Spray filler straight onto sanding sealer. It would look even worse if I just painted straight onto the MDF. It's really worth just preparing the MDF so the surface is sealed nicely, as the yellow acrylic paint does a nice job of. Just running your finger along it, you can tell it's just a lot smoother than it was. It should take a second coat a lot nicer. So back for another coat then. Now when you're doing this, if you go that way and then that way, just bear in mind that's going to get twice as much paint. So look out for bits that you're not painting, not intending to paint, getting covered as well and getting a double dose of it. Tell straight away it looks a lot smoother now. I've repeated the last step, sanding down and spray fillering a couple of times now, just gently sanding down any of the bumps. It's good enough now, I reckon, to get the colour on. Now I'm just going to try the same stuff, so primer filler, but this is in yellow, so hopefully it'll come out. It might be slightly wrong, the tint, in which case I'll have to get some actual spray paint, but otherwise it's just going to give another layer, and the more layers you get, the more you sand down, the better the finish will be. So we'll give this a go. Now the black bits. I've gone for matte black. So hopefully that will give more of a satin finish with rubberized bits. It's not always the case. It's not very easy to get a true matte black when painting with aerosol. However, it actually helps if it is cold. So remember I said warm it up a bit if you want a glossy finish. If you want a matte finish, it's often good to paint in cold. So one last little coat of primer for all these last detail components. Already having shaken it up. Those little bits as well I've stuck down with blue tack, just because the force of the spray will actually blow them away. That bit as well. Should do it. So that yellow high build primer is a little bit orangey to make it look really good. So I've gone for this Montana type of paint. It's a graffiti paint and it comes in 3 types. The black series is more matte, so it's probably better for the spark finish that you've got on the drill. So we'll do a final coat with this. See how it goes. Remember, a good long shake. I've been shaking this before the recording anyway, so it should work. So now I'm going to engrave the writing on the side of the drill, so the DeWalt logo and the serial plate. In here I've got some black card, and as you can see on the top we've just got a special kind of masking tape. Hopefully this setting is enough just to vaporise the masking tape and leave a substrate underneath, i.e. the black card. If it goes right the way through, it'll be pretty useless, but we'll see how well this works in a second. The idea is I've also on 2D Design overlaid the cutting thing, the vector which will cut it out, so I just use card 20 speed or something like that, and I've already put double-sided tape on the back, so it just cuts the tape underneath right up to the edge, so there's no peeling as it comes off. So the torque selector 3D printed part, it's been painted in black already. We're using the same method with the special masking tape and engraving through it, although I'm using this rotary indexer, so it's a spinning axis, so you can engrave or cut round things on the laser cutter. It's not something we expect you to know how to use yourself, so come and speak to one of us if you want to use this device. So having sprayed it, so I've obviously etched it first, masking tape on the top, special stuff, sprayed it in yellow, and now the painful, tedious task of peeling off the tape. This is the easy one as well. You should wait till I do the serial plate on the other side with all the little writing. But yeah, as you can see, it can get quite good detail. Pretty happy with this one. Also, it's worth noting I've used actual black sugar paper, or printed paper, so the actual fibres are black all the way through. It's not black printed on white paper. So scratching this like this with the scalpel isn't going to be an issue with scratching off the black surface because it's black paper. Just these two little details as well. So now I've just dabbed a few drops of wood glue on the end here. Wood glue is probably the best choice for here, obviously being MDF, it's wood, form of wood. It also gives you plenty of time to just reposition it, get it right. Super glue can be a real nightmare to get it right first time, spot on. You need a bit of time to reposition it. I'm just putting a few more dabs on here just so that it'll hold nicely, but just overlapping those joints as well, maybe even a bit on the joints just to seep in. Obviously really just don't go crazy here because you've got so much surface area for it to adhere to that it really doesn't need much, and you don't want it all oozing out the side when you squeeze it together, so that should be fine. Line it up, and again just take your time, make sure it's all nicely positioned. Obviously it is a critical thing to get right. Once you've let it to dry, set it to dry, it's going to be that's going to be it. You're not going to change it, so get it right. So I'm going to just use a quick grip on the bottom to hold the bottom two bits together. One of the large these things should manage to hold the diameter of the drill at the top, but I just want to make sure it's all. Appreciate my elbows in the way at the moment. So get this all lined up. Looks okay to me. You see, I want to squeeze it shut as well so that it has a good tight split line as well. I don't have too much gap visible. DeWalt's a good quality product. So I'm going to just use a bit of paper towel here to protect the paintwork. These rubber pads should be okay, nice and flat, but the sharp edges on the cheaper clamp here might be in danger of damaging the paintwork as well. So let's just get that all nice and lined up. Should be okay there. That back's okay. a bit high on that side. So yeah, you've got a bit of chance to just kind of twist it, lever it, get it all looking nice. So these last bits I'm going to super glue on, I've decided. Could use hot melt, could be messy that, or epoxy resin. The latter two have the advantage of having a bit of forgiveness in gaps or anything, whereas super glue really wants to be quite a tight fit. It should be quite a tight fit on this anyway, so what I'm going to do is just glue this first bit on. I've drilled a hole through there to locate it centrally as well. So carefully just stick it on like that. Now when it's in place and the glue is properly dried, I'm going to very carefully just guide the actual hand drill with a 9mm hole into there, just so that can all go together, because if I glued those all together just flat, they'd be quite weak and they'd probably break off with years of manhandling in the back of a classroom, I'm sure. So this dowel's just going to make it all a bit stronger, but I'll need to drill through this. I need to be absolutely sure that the glue is properly dried, so again I'll be patient, probably do that tomorrow. All these other little bits I'll just glue on as well with super glue. Just to get the hole between the clutch and the main body, I've got a 9mm drill bit here. I want to be extra careful here drilling it in. You can hold on to this bit of a chuck, it freely moves, so it just makes life a bit easier. Just obviously when you start, just make sure it goes in straight, go nice and slow, hold your hand in a relaxed way as well to let the drill do any movement rather than the model. And then when you feel like you're in the right place, then you can speed up a bit. Don't push too hard though, just gently let the drill do its work. That should do it. So, see if it fits. Yeah, that's good. Again, go easy on it, make sure you don't have it right up to the edges. Because it will just split out if you're not careful. There you go. One model drill.